Welcome to Full Discourse with me, Josh Elkin. This is a space where I invite guests of all walks of the food industry to discuss major moments in food's vast internet history. But before we jump in, make sure you're subscribed to this channel so you'll never miss another episode, and maybe leave a nice review or comment to support the show. All right, in this episode, we're diving deep into the lore and behind the scenes of Mythical Kitchen, the food and drink offshoot of Rhett Link's hit short form series, Good Mythical Morning. And, who better to speak on this than, I'd like to call him a friend, my friend, long time friend, known you for a long time, Josh Scherer, AKA Mythical Chef Josh. He's the executive director of culinary content at Mythical Entertainment. He was also listed in Forbes 30 for 30 for food and drink, and previously worked as a food writer for Los Angeles Magazine and a columnist for Maxim. But other than me reading from this script, let's hear more directly from the source. Josh,
you and I we've had a long history, brother. We have left footprints all over the culinary landscape on the internet.
We really have, and it's funny because when people ask me about the style of food that I do, I always go on this tangent about how there's basically only three people that do the same thing that we do. Me, you, and Kyle, Vulgar Chef.
Yeah.
Like, we're the only ones.
Dude, we have made so many things on Good Mythical Morning because, I don't work on writing the scripts or whatever. We have a whole team. It's such a massive machine. We have a team of awesome writers. But an episode script will come out and they'll be like, decoding the internet's biggest food crimes. And they're like, the chunky clam chowder popsicle. And I'm like, that's Kyle. Yeah. Or it'll be like, the spaghetti bun cake. I was like, that's Kyle too. Yeah. And so we've had so many, shout out to Kyle Marcoux, man. Dude, we've had so many of his dishes.
Best guy. So, man, welcome to the podcast. I appreciate you for coming on. Like I was explaining to you before, this is like all about archiving food lore on the internet. And, I couldn't do an episode of this without tapping into what used to be your moniker, Culinary Brodown.
Oh, man. Culinary Brodown is my father. Call me Mythical Chef.
Oh, that's good. So, how long has it been? When did you start on the? Let's do a little brief history of Josh Scherer, Josh Albert Scherer.
So, I went to school as a political science student. Right, my goal was to work for the CIA, and then I heard that if you've ever done any drug in your lifetime, you probably can't work for the CIA. And I was like, okay, scratch that. Let's find a new. Listen, I went to UC Santa Barbara. There were a lot of raves around there, right? It was the swinging mid 2000s. But anyways, I was like, let's figure out another plan. And food is one of the things that I was always the most passionate about. It was either food or lifting heavy weights. And as I grown to get in this chair with my bad back, glad I didn't take the weightlifting route. But no, one of my first exposures to food content on the internet, especially, was Epic Mealtime. And so literally, I was watching your ass in my college dorm room, not to date you or anything, but that's sort of what got me into, being interested in that style of food, where I was like, oh, people are actually making careers of this. Even though that was kind of before the time when you had these big YouTube machines like Mythical springing up. But yeah, I started Culinary Brodown when I was 21, would have been junior year of college. I was living with two fascist Italian soccer hooligans and my high school valedictorian at UCLA, which was great. If your house ever gets robbed and you end up in a street fight, having soccer hooligans with you I will never forget. He went for the headbutt immediately.
That's how you know it's serious. Sacrificing his own head to fuck someone up.
Oh, unbelievable, man. Incredible to watch. But, we would just be cooking together and drinking together. And the year before in Santa Barbara, too, it was just every weekend was we're going to get 10 pounds of carne asada. We're going to fire up the grill. We're going to drink a bunch. We're going to play drinking games. I remember once we put a bunch of salsa and guac in the middle of our drinking game table because we were just eating off of it. And then we started playing a dice game called Snappa, where you throw a die high in the air and you try and land it in somebody's cup. But we made a rule that if it landed in the salsa, you had to take a shot of half salsa, half tequila. And so that ended up being sort of the ethos of the blog that I started, right? It was almost kind of like Tucker Max meets Smitten Kitchen.
Oh my God.
If you will. Kind of, I hope they serve beer in hell.
Throwback names you're bringing up right now.
Dude, but that was it, man. That was we grew up in what was called the blog to book pipeline. where you would start a blog, you would develop a brand. Instagram was in its very early stages. And then you would take that blog and all that IP and you would spin that into a book that may or may not actually make money. But that's exactly what happened to me, because I had Culinary Brodown. It won an award from Sever magazine.
From what magazine?
Sever,
Yeah.
which is now kind of shuttered, I think. They pulled the print version from shelves. So now Sever is just a weird legacy brand. But Sever at the time was one of the big 3 food magazines with Food and Wine and Bon Appetit. And they did an annual food blog awards. I submitted mine for best new blog because I just started it. And then they like fast tracked it for just the best writing category, which is really cool because I've always loved writing, and I would write from almost this weird caricature perspective. Like I wrote one essay about the Velocid diet is what I called it, where the carnivore diet was just becoming a thing. The paleo diet was a thing. And as like an athlete and as a man trying to figure out the world, I was like, all this shit is so stupid. Let me just write about my new diet plan where you only eat what a velociraptor would. This is only just raw sides of beef. You're eating the bones. And it was just this insane creative outlet for me. And then I would make, a 16-ounce tomahawk ribeye to go along with it. And so after that, I ended up getting a literary agent. Shout out to Dotto and Steve. It's kind of a tag team. I literally talked to them the other day and we were like, yo, remember when you like cold called me when I was in college? And so I had a literary agent while I was, I think just starting my senior year of college, and all my friends are like, struggling with organic chemistry, and I'm like watching all my grades fail as I'm like devoting all my time and energy to this blog. And I eventually dropped out and then started writing for magazines, not because it was lucrative. I just dropped out because I was too dumb to finish school. But I started writing for magazines, started freelancing. Los Angeles Magazine became my first full-time editorial gig, where I would go around LA and review restaurants. I had to book under a pseudonym. I was Thorbild Jakobsen.
Thorbild Jakobsen.
Yeah. I went to a name generator online.
Is there proof of this anywhere?
I don't think so, but
Okay.
I do remember, because there were only maybe 7 full-time food writers in LA at the time. And so like my fiance Julia used to be a restaurant publicist, and they would print out pictures of all the critics and they would give them to the host stand.
Right.
And everybody knew that my pseudonym was Thorbild Jakobsen because of course they did. It was so dumb.
You don't forget a Thorgood?
Thorbild.
You don't forget a Thorbild Jakobsen.
I had a whole story. I was a traveling Norwegian fiber optic cable salesman. I came here to check out the landscape.
You could totally pass as a Norwegian site. What is it? Norwegian what?
Fiber optic cable salesman.
You totally passes that.
Uh-huh.
You look Norwegian.
That's why I went to the Norwegian name generator and spit out Thorbild Jakobsen. It's like Childish Gambino getting it from the Wu-Tang generator.
100%. Post Malone, same thing.
100%. Yeah. Like I was never able to take a food writing or food media job as seriously as my bosses wanted me to take it.
Mm-hmm.
I was always just doing silly shit, like going under the name Thorbild Jakobsen, despite the fact that people would know who I was and killing the journalistic integrity, whatever.
Right.
I would insert jokes into all my pieces that would get edited out. I eventually got fired from LA Magazine over a joke about Will Smith's rap album Millennium.
I was about to tell you to keep his wife's name out of your mouth.
Listen, man, not talking on that one. But yeah, and so then I released the Culinary Brodown cookbook, and I'd gotten fired from the LA Mag job on the day that I was going to quit because it just obviously wasn't working.
Yeah.
And then
Wait. Backtrack for a second. I skipped this, but with a stupid Will Smith joke. But you got fired for making a distasteful joke on Millennium.
It was
the classic album from 1999.
That was the I was writing about the burger at Father's Office.
Okay.
Right. And it was kind of like an in defense of fancy burgers sort of piece. And I wrote like in July 21st, 1999, just 3 months before Will Smith's seminal album Millennium came out, Chef Sang Yoon dropped the Father's Office burger. And so it was this like absurdist, like, hey, Millennium sucks. Will Smith's rap career was a joke. Jada, don't come for me. But, and so I was sort of trying to set it up as, hey, this is an absurdist piece.
Yeah.
And the editor-in-chief, for whatever reason, was editing this piece. And she crossed out the word seminal and wrote important. So Will Smith's Important album. And I was like, hey, the joke only works if I say seminal because it's such a stupid academic SAT word that you then know that I'm kidding because, of course, it's not a seminal album. And then she was like, well, the word seminal is sexist. And I'm like, what? And she's like, yeah, Latin sem, as in semen, meaning seed, meaning important, meaning masculine. And I'm like, hey, I like, listen, I like total feminist, but like, I don't think that is the case with this usage. And then it just launched a kind of protracted war that I eventually got fired for.
Okay, I was about to ask to explain to the viewers and listeners what seminal meant, but now I get it. I mean, they get it.
But yeah, point is, it was, I was trying to find a place where I could actually use my skills, use my passions, and not be sort of reined in.
Mm-hmm.
And then I freelanced for a while, and that was just hard. I don't have that freelance gene. And I was sick of writing pitches that I would just not get paid for. And then I'd done one episode with Rhett Link called Will It Burger, like a year before.
Will It Burger?
Will It Burger.
I thought it was Will It Taco, and then I also thought it was Will It Corn Dog.
So Will It Taco is the first ever Will It. So Rhett Link,
I knew that. Okay.
had a series that is utterly genius and the exact way that I love to cook and the way that I think about food, where they asked the question, Will It Taco? And they took random foods such as, like one was just like broccoli. They were just like, let's put steamed broccoli in a taco shell and eat it and cause laughs. And then pork blood was the big one, and pine needles. And it was just absurd and stupid. They wanted that food to get more sort of complex and have more charm to it, because otherwise you're just putting random crap in between a burger bun.
Yeah.
And so I came and did Will It Burger, and they sent me the ideas. It was like, one was just, it was like beef jerky Will It Burger. And so I did like a dehydrated kale chip slaw and like beef jerky, kind of rehydrated it and mashed it into a patty. Like I used all the culinary expertise that I could to try and make these things really cool. And one of them was just an animal skin burger. And they, of course, wanted the last round to be disgusting, because that's become a hallmark of the show. And so I made a burger that was just from like 5 different animal skins coagulated together and seared off. So the inside was just still sort of like raw and chewy. And to this day, one of the most disgusting things I've ever made. So I did that with them, but they were a smaller company at the time, a little bit, less organized than they are now. And I didn't think it had a chance to be like a full-time gig. About a year passes, I send them a copy of my cookbook because I was like looking for free press. And then Stevie, who's the chief creative officer, sends me a DM on Twitter just saying like, hey, you want a job? And I was like, okay. At the time I was running a chimichanga pop-up at Smorgasburg.
Really?
Stony
Never
bologna,
knew that.
Stony bologna, artisanal chimichangas, and fried chicken.
Love that.
And I lost like $5,000 in a month. Oh. And I was like, this is way harder than I thought it would be.
Okay, back up a second. There's a lot to unpack here.
There's so much to unpack.
Okay, so here's a couple questions I have. My timeline was off in terms of how I thought you ended up going to Rhett Link. I thought that you wrote your book. They stumbled upon that book and then reached out to you. It's not that far off, but then they reached out to you through that. Back to your book for a second. Before you wrote your book, you were writing for magazines?
So LA Magazine, I was like full-time, but I'd freelance for like LA Weekly, Vice Munchies, GQ.
Right.
I had the long-standing column at Maxim called Bite Club that was really fun.
I knew that. I did a Maxim thing. Maybe you were part of that. I don't know.
Dude, maybe.
Hey, this is many years ago.
It's all blurry looking back.
So, okay. So then you did that and then you wrote a book, and you leveraged your writing at these magazines to sell the book?
Pretty much, yeah. That's kind of how it was. And this is all sort of from the advice of like my agents who, again, I'd known since I was 21. Yeah. They were like, rack up as many bylines as possible, and then that's going to help you sell to a publisher. The crazy thing is, I had like a third of a book proposal done maybe at their urging, but no publishers had showed any interest until one day I get a random DM from my eventual editor, Morgan Hedden, and she just DMs me going like, hey, have you thought about writing a cookbook? And I screenshot it and I like send it to my agents. I'm like, what do I do? And they're like, tell her, yes, I have a book proposal ready. I can send it to you on Monday. And I was like, but I don't have a book proposal ready. And they were like, you will on Monday. And so I said that. And I just started frantically typing up the rest of this proposal, sent it on. And of course we were like, Josh is a pretty hot commodity in this town. He's got a lot of offers on the table right now. You should jump quickly at this price. And they just did. And we had no other offers. And so I ended up getting a deal that at that time was like a lot of money for me coming fresh out of college.
Yeah.
After taxes and photography and agent fees, that number goes down real quick.
Most people who want to write a cookbook, who want a big advance, don't understand that the advance is meant to pay for the book production. Yeah, exactly. People are just like, I got a big check. No, you got to put a book together at that point.
I think when I had, because I got, the first installment of the advance, and I was like, I'm going to be responsible and just pay down my student loans. So I put, 10, 15 grand towards that or whatever. And then by the time we did our photo shoot, it was like before I'd gotten my last installment of the book. And so my photographer, Andrea DeGosto, who shot the Mythical Cookbook out in March, she like sends me an invoice and I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't have money. And she was like, what? And I was like, wait, no, I thought like I could pay for this with the last book check, but that's not coming for another month. Like, are you cool? Like waiting a month? I'm sorry. I fudged this up. I'm a child basically. And so she was very nice and waited for me to pay her, but
clearly a decade later, you're still working with her.
Exactly.
So that's a good thing.
No, she's a peach.
So I thought that the book leveraged your introduction with Rhett Link, but it's not that far off, honestly.
No, that's kind of how I remember the story.
Yeah.
But the first video I did with them, it was like Stevie knew my editor at Los Angeles Magazine, Leslie, and was like, and literally said, do you know anyone who, quote, does any weird shit with food? And she was like, well, I got this Thorbild Jakobsen character working for me, and he does weird shit on his blog.
Oh, I love that. My favorite thing about talking to you, and we've always had this kind of banter back and forth, is that like I'm genuinely like, when you say shit like a skin burger, I'm like, wait, I'm like thinking in my head, I'm like, what? How could this work?
I literally saw the wheels turning in your head when I said that.
Did you use meat glue to do that?
Like, no, I could have. I've used transglutaminase.
Yeah,
I've used that
powder,
for other
right?
things.
Apparently, what we're talking about, by the way, is this like powder that basically fuses like raw flesh together. So if you wanted to make like a Frankenstein, burger, not a bad idea, you could just like fuse it with this powder. Anyways,
one of the coolest things I've ever seen somebody do with that, it was this like, God, his name was Anders something. He was one of those like 3 Michelin starred chefs in Sweden, but also had this weird like rock star metal guy kind of like macabreness to him. He took a chicken he broke down a chicken to where it was just the carcass, and then he took pork meat and he used transglutaminase to bind that back to the chicken carcass and then carved it. So it was like, and then sewed the chicken skin back onto the pork meat covered chicken carcass and roasted it. So it looked exactly like a chicken, except it was pork.
That is amazing.
Genius.
Yeah. This is the type of stuff why I like talking to you.
And that's what I live for. This dumb stuff is what I live for.
I love that shit. So how did you like get to Rhett Link for that first thing? Like he DM'd you, that was it. He just DM'd you and was like, come make a video, like you want a job? Or before you did that, you didn't have the job? How did that work?
Well, so before I did that, I didn't have the job, but Stevie, who's the chief creative officer, kind of like runs the whole show. I mean, Rhett Link are, they're so busy filming all the time that she's kind of like, what's like a positive word for a puppet master? I guess you just got to say it happily. Like, she's a puppet master.
Geppetto.
She's like a Geppetto type. But yeah, she basically DM'd me and I had like a 10-minute interview with her and she was like, yeah, you seem cool. Good news. You have a full-time job now. And my initial full-time job was to make my own cooking show with them on a spin-off channel they'd started called This Is Mythical. But this was at a time when only like real mythical heads will know this. YouTube had basically invested not invested money, but they'd like funded a season of Good Mythical Morning where we produced 4 videos per day. So there was a point in GMM that we were making 4 videos a day.
That is tiring, to say the least. Oh my God.
And it was, and at the same time, they were still trying to run a spin-off channel, which they hired me for. And I'd never been on camera before. And so I just had no idea to do it. And we shot 2 episodes that eventually would never get to air because they shut down the spin-off channel because they were making 4 videos a day on GMM. And they were like, we need to protect the main thing. And like, we just need to focus on this right now. And so I shot 2 episodes that were like utterly garbage. One was like a Slim Jim stuffed churro. And then one was me making a $300 Big Mac, which would eventually go on to be our fancy fast food series, which is one of the most successful that we have on Mythical Kitchen. That's
amazing. For all of you that don't know, the fancy fast food is exactly what it is. You take a fast food item like a Big Mac and you fancy the fuck out of it.
It's responsible for like all the best bites of food in my life.
Of course.
I mean, you know well as anyone, like when you're cooking for the internet, it's like, it's less important how it tastes. Of course you want it to taste good, but it's you need it to look good and all this stuff. Fancy fast food is the one thing where I'm super protective of like, I want to make sure this is the best tasting damn thing I've ever put in my mouth.
What did you use there? You used obviously Wagyu.
We did a
Was there gold on it? You used gold leaf or no?
We put a little bit of gold leaf on the bun, like instead of sesame seeds. But after that, we decided like we never want to be the gold leaf. It's
agree.
Annoying. It's stupid.
Fuck off with the gold leaf.
And it's not even expensive.
It's not even really gold.
Places are charging like $1,000 for a pizza with gold. That is like $12 worth of gold leaf on there. It's so like pepperoni is more expensive than gold leaf.
I was gonna say the cheese is more expensive if they're using it well. Right.
But yeah, that first one we took Lone Mountain DNA tested American Wagyu because Wagyu is a really vague term. It's just Japanese for Japanese cow. Mm-hmm. But this is DNA tested, never had the bloodline watered down since it was in America. Place out of New Mexico, best American Wagyu I've ever had. And I hand chopped a ribeye like French tartare style. So just chopped the hell out of it with a cleaver and then hand formed it. Fleur de sel, like smoked Tello cherry pepper or whatever. Seared that off. I used sodium citrate.
Isn't that to cure stuff?
No, that's
sodium nitrate.
Sodium nitrate, yeah. Sodium citrate is the chemical in American cheese that makes it melt really well.
Getting my periodic table mixed up.
I love the nerdy shit about this. Dude,
I do too. I'm like, I don't even remember what we're talking about. I'm just like, I want to eat and cook with you. Like,
dude, same. Know? If you take cheddar cheese and milk and then just melt that and add sodium citrate, it turns it into perfect nacho cheese / American cheese. Okay. And so I use that with like camembert and cheddar. Then laid it out on a silpat and then cut it into squares. So it was like a camembert infused homemade American cheese. We did an uni special sauce with like Santa Barbara sea urchin. Okay. And then like pickled sea fennel or just like random shit. And I got the bun from Lodge Bread, it was my favorite bakery in LA. Mm-hmm. Asked him to make me like a custom brioche bun that I could slice into 3. And it was just like the most unreal eating experience we've ever had until we recently redid on like the 5-year anniversary of Fancy Big Mac. We redid another Fancy Big Mac that was even better because we did a thing that none of us knew if it would work, but we took frozen foie gras chunks and we put it in the meat grinder while we ground our meat fresh. And the foie gras, you know the way butter bakes in a biscuit? Yeah. Where like it melts and it steams? It was that, but with foie gras. Whoa. So all the foie gras fat just melted through the beef, and that was just silly.
That sounds incredible.
Yeah, so fun. I don't even remember what else we put on that burger.
Dude, speaking of foie gras, I recently went to Au Cheval in Chicago.
Oh, hell yeah.
You've been there?
No, I've never been. I've always wanted to.
Apparently, like, it's one of the best burgers in the country. Very, very good, but that wasn't the takeaway for me. I had a foie gras omelet. Blew me away. God damn. Blew me away, honestly. All right, so let's just get back on track for a second. Okay. You eventually get full-time, which is what you were saying you wanted. You're never a gig kind of guy. You don't like being freelance and all that stuff, which I get. You know, it's annoying to figure it out.
I got the ADHD thing where I'm like, I can't bounce, man.
I get it. I totally get it. And then you started working for Rhett Link, and they started doing food stuff. So let's just do a quick little summary here of like who Rhett and Link are. Okay, Rhett and Link. I have like a whole like bio here. I'm gonna read off.
I'll probably learn something from it.
If you've been living under a rock, let's first answer who Rhett and Link are. It all started when Rhett McLaughlin and Charles Lincoln Neal III.
The full name.
Didn't know he was the third, by the way. Met in Buies Creek Elementary in North Carolina back in 1984. So these guys have been friends for 40 years. They became lifelong friends and collaborators with a shared interest in filmmaking and video creation. This friendship would last them through their time in North Carolina University, working as engineers before quitting to focus on Christian mission work. Mm-hmm. Didn't know that.
Campus Crusaders, I think, was the group.
That sounds like...
Yep.
They've since publicly announced and discussed their personal experiences in deconstruction. I'm assuming that kind of means like they've left the church.
Effectively, yeah.
Effectively.
They get real deep into it.
But anyways, other than that serious shit, they're just two super funny dudes who have been making amazing content and have basically made a content empire, Mythical Entertainment. They've maintained the show and grown an audience for over 10 years, which is serious OG stuff. As an OG, it's remarkable that they're still doing it together and they haven't sued each other or, you know.
Preach, brother, preach.
Like, how many times have we seen that? It's almost 100% of the time.
Inshallah, they don't sue each other. If they sue each other, I don't get a Christmas bonus. Yeah. And I want that Christmas bonus.
So Good Mythical Morning started as like a kind of like a podcast sort of chat show in 2012. You got in with them in 2017 with the Will It Burger.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. I didn't realize that. And then that transitioned to Will It Corn Dog, which transitioned to Will It Taco.
So Willa Taco was first, but we've probably done like, maybe like 70 different Willets. I'm trying to think how many there'd be. So we do one a month. And we've been doing it for a while, probably more than 70. But I remember the first Willet that I worked on when I was there full time, because they hired me to host my own spinoff. Then they kill that channel. And then they were like, hey, we'll just stay on and become an associate producer for Good Mythical Morning itself.
Right.
And I was like, cool. And I worked on Willet Meatloaf was the first one. And I remember like, we wanted to make sure they were all just these giant logs. So we did like a sushi meatloaf where I just like blended a bunch of raw fish with rice to make this giant fish rice thing. And then like drizzled eel sauce and mayo and like shingled cucumbers and avocado. It was just stupid. But it was so fun because like that's the stuff that I get off on, even if it doesn't taste the best.
Yeah.
I take it as a challenge, like a creative, blank slate that I can work on. And I did that. And then God, I would have been doing that for maybe like 7-8 months until YouTube basically like pulled the funding on this 4 video a day thing. And we went back to just 1. And then the sort of the seeds were sort of laying for me to eventually host my own show on the Good Mythical Morning channel, which we would have launched in like summer 2019. We did a show called Food Fears, where I would the first episode I think was bull testicle breakfast burrito.
Yes. I remember this now. First of all, that sushi meatloaf sounds cool.
The bull testicle breakfast burrito is way better.
That
man.
sounds cool
I was
too.
proud of that. I cured and smoked the testicles to make ball bacon.
Ooh,
and it was pretty good.
Did you slice it thin?
Yeah, super
it's
thin.
Probably really good.
Got a little crispy.
Dude, prairie oysters, come on.
No, testicles are good. Like straight up.
Yeah, I agree. Don't hate it until you try it. But what you're saying is exactly the way is like my whole ethos. Like people ask me like what my style of food is, which is our style, and I always preface my explanation by saying, excuse the douchiness before I say this, but it's like an artistic expression through food.
Yeah,
not in like a Picasso kind of way. So you start doing that, then Mythical Kitchen happens and you get a team. Now you have a team. You have like Nicole, you have Trevor, you have Vianney.
Yeah, we just call it V.
Yeah. And then boom, it's got some success. A year later, you start your own podcast with Nicole called A Hot Dog is a Sandwich, which is an incredible name.
Thank you.
I love that. I personally think it is a sandwich.
To me, it's so obvious. We did a whole 5-part series where we talked to a philosopher, a historian, a lawyer, because this does get legal, and then an actual hot dog shop owner about whether or not it's a sandwich. And like, I was just trying to entertain them the whole time because of course it is. It's just thing in bread means sandwich.
Yeah.
It's a sandwich.
Yeah. Is a taco a sandwich?
Absolutely not. It's not bread. It's a tortilla. The tortilla predates leavened bread by 10,000 years. And it's a miracle that it did. It's incredible. The miracle of nixtamalization, where the corn gets broken down from the lot. Like, that's unbelievable. No, a taco's not a sandwich.
What about a flour tortilla?
Okay, now we're talking. Well, no, this.
What about a pita?
This is why we talked to a lawyer, because there was a famous case in Minnesota that went to the state Supreme Court deciding whether or not a burrito was a sandwich, because there was a Qdoba in a mall. No, there was a Panera in a mall, and part of Panera's contract with the mall said no sandwich competitors can move in near us.
Oh my God.
A Qdoba moves in, and Panera sues, saying that a burrito is a sandwich. And so you literally have this like Supreme Court a state Supreme Court judge who probably thought he'd be doing, like high profile cases that would, expound on legal precedent. Instead, he's just asked, is a burrito a sandwich? And he has to go back to case law.
That does not sound silly at all. If there's some sort of like contract where you can't have like a sandwich and they're there and they're pulling business, that's legit.
It's real implications.
Yeah, that is definite implications.
He had to pull from the precedent of, I think it was Bimbo brand, Bimbo, the Mexican food brand. Yeah. Well, so I think they were making hard shell tacos and importing them to the US. The US was taxing them as snacks. They were taxing them as chips, which had a higher tax because bread is nutritive. So you want a lower tax to, incentivize people to eat more bread as opposed to snacks.
And they're calling tortillas or taco shells
chips.
That's borderline racism.
I agree. No, it like kind of is though, right?
Yeah.
Because you're eating those as a substitute for bread. Like it's a whole meal.
Yeah.
And so literally they sued the United States of America.
Oh my God.
and I believe won. And they had to create a whole separate category. So there's so much of this like weird, nerdy food law stuff that when you say, is a hot dog a sandwich? Like there was a case in New York where they were taxing hot dogs, but not taxing sandwiches. And it was just trying to drive out cheap street vendors. And so there's a lot of,
Dude, you are such a vast encyclopedia of all things food lore. I love it.
I view the whole world through food, right?
Dude,
like any
same.
story is a food story to me.
Everything's a food story.
100%.
For sure. Like, for example, this is going to sound ridiculous. Matzah, which, by the way, is basically an extra large saltine cracker.
Yeah, big time.
The original matzah like had yeast in it.
Wait, really?
Yeah, it just didn't have time to rise.
Oh yeah, fair.
So
yeah.
why can't you eat yeast things on Passover? It's such a weird thing.
There's also another case that flour tortillas are technically matzah based on kosher law. And so there's a world in which growing up could have just been eating
anything.
Tacos
and burritos.
And burritos.
Anyways, we're getting to a tangent here.
No, hold on. No, matzah pizza. Listen.
Amazing. Love it.
I hate it.
You don't like matzah pizza?
I grew up bringing sweaty matzah PB&J sandwiches to school during Pesach and like grew up making matzah pizzas at home. It sucks. Matzah is only good with charoset.
That's true, which is basically at least in my experience, pickled horseradish.
Wait, no,
that's
moror.
Yeah, my bad. you're testing me
or no,
here.
Chrein. I don't remember.
Yeah.
They also like Lord of the Rings names.
Haroset is basically Jewish apple pie spread.
Yeah,
essentially.
A little bit of wine in there.
Oh,
oof,
yeah.
Oof.
Dude, imagine like a haroset pie
Dude.
with a matzah crust.
Girl, wait.
Next, that's a thing. All right. See, this is we're coming up with ideas now. All right, so hot dog is a sandwich. You talk about things like, is a hot dog a sandwich? Does pineapple belong on pizza? I like a pineapple pizza personally.
That's the Canadian
big fan.
It was invented
big
in
fan. Yeah.
Ottawa?
Hawaiian pizza invented in Canada. Who would have thought? One of my favorite series that you do on Mythical Kitchen is the Last Meal series.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's amazing. Correct me if I'm wrong. You basically interview a celebrity or someone of noteworthiness. You ask them what their last meal would be if they were on death row or, terminally ill, maybe. I don't know. And then you make it for them.
Yeah.
Which is freaking awesome. Then you feed it to them.
Yeah, we sit there and eat it together, which is funny because the first episode we shot, I can't remember who it was even with, but I didn't eat next to them. And then it was awkward because they're just eating. I'm staring at them like, what happens when you die? And they have like a mouthful of a calzone that their mom used to make or something.
That's funny.
But no, we eat it together, yeah. And then I typically ask them about these deep, big philosophical questions, like what happens when you die? Ask about religion, traumas, stuff like that. And it's to me, it's my favorite thing that I've ever done. It's very me encapsulated in one piece of content.
I love it. And then obviously we were talking about before, you guys launched the cookbook, the Mythical Cookbook, which not only has a bunch of the stuff that you've done on screen, but also specific things just for the cookbook, which I find is a good selling point.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Can't do this unless you buy the cookbook. Really good. So with all that to say, like we've covered a lot, and the cool thing here is like this podcast is all about like archiving and touching on internet food lore, which dates back to 1997, and we were just children with that. And it's just a really cool thing to talk to someone who I respect and who I think is genius in the kitchen, who does similar things like I do. So like when it comes to like evolution, when it comes to where food online started versus where food online is right now, did you ever think that it would get to this point? Did you ever like think that food online would surpass food on television, for example? Because something that I had a conversation with my dad, who's 75 years old right now, a decade ago, when I was about to quit my cushy corporate job and jump into internet. And he said, honestly, Josh, do you really think that YouTube is going to be bigger than television? And I looked at him and I'm like, you just made my decision way easier.
Damn,
yeah.
Man.
So yeah, asking you, did you ever think like that food online would be where it's at right now?
Absolutely not, man. And I'm not gonna pretend like I was prognosticating the what do they call it, the television replacement theory.
Yeah.
Where we Mythical's a big company. We have like senior staff meetings where we're like looking at graphs on like here's what the like free streaming TV numbers are doing right now, and here are projections into 2027. And I've gotten to learn a lot about it, which is very, very cool. But back when I like started working for Rhett Link or started working in food media, Food Network was king. And even my dad was like, I remember being 11 years old and I watched Food Network all the time. Total latchkey kid. I learned from Rachel Ray and Tyler Florence and Bobby and Jada. And my dad would be like, food on the television? That'll never last. And so everybody's sort of had that response, but food has become such a unique part of pop culture now, thanks to people like Bourdain, or even like Eddie Huang was a big influence on me,
Love
David
that
Chang.
show. Yeah.
But it's such an important part of pop culture, up there with music, up there with sports and all this. But the YouTube boom, man, like I never thought it would be a full-time job or career or anything. I just wanted to do something different. And I was so sick of writing for magazines that were failing. But now looking into the future, it's like this is a long-term sustainable career. And there's a lot of people who are like, oh man, you're doing YouTube. That's cool. But like one day you could have a Food Network show. And it's like, more people are watching what I do on YouTube. And frankly, like I'm making more money on YouTube than I would if I got one season of a Food Network show. Like, why do Food Network still call? I'd love to talk, but like, you know what I mean? There's no incentive to leave. Like it's very much the future. And along with all the other platforms you can sort of syndicate YouTube content on. I mean, we're getting numbers on Snapchat for God's sakes. And so people are just consuming things differently, and everybody seems to love consuming food content. And I never expected that.
Yeah, I everything you just said, I couldn't agree more. I was the same when I grew up. The only reason it was right place, right time for me. I was just the only one that had a condo when we started Epic Meal Time. So like that was just like what happened. But I remember specifically having this conversation with myself that literally lived and died in one thought, and it was, I really want to be a food celebrity, but I don't want to go to culinary school and I don't want to go work in a restaurant. So that was it. Never thought of it again and this was when I was like 16. And then 15 years later, it happened randomly. But the point being is that I also grew up watching food television. Jamie Oliver was a huge influence. Naked Chef was a huge influence for me. Even like predating Food Network on PBS, like The Frugal Gourmet, Jacques Pepin. Like my parents were loving that shit.
Yan can cook, baby.
Love
me some Martin Yan.
Dude, he's amazing. By the way, was he the same guy that did like the muscle enhancers? You know those muscle machines, Yan Can Cook, and like the muscle things that like
was there a crossover?
I don't know.
It's too deep food lore for me, man.
Definitely. So it's really fascinating to be here, to both kind of like have grown up. Although I know I'm a little older than you, but like we basically like both watch Food Network, both loved food, both see world through food, got our start in early internet, not really realizing what it was going to get to right now. And the cool thing about food online, especially in this like next chapter of, let's call it this next quarter's bad. Anyway, this next level of food internet is like, it's constantly evolving. The TikTok generation, the Snapchat is a huge thing for me too. Like I got a huge Snapchat audience, and it's not just YouTube, which is a really fascinating thing. I think the best part about internet content these days and social media platforms is when we started it back in the day, if you were big on one thing, you were big on all things. There was no ecosystem per social media platform. Now it's like there's a YouTube platform ecosystem, there's a Facebook ecosystem, there's a Snapchat ecosystem. So you could literally be big on one thing and not on the other, which provides jobs. It provides opportunity for so many people in so many different ways. Like I'm doing private label content right now, like as just a side gig, just for jokes. Like Foodbeast is hiring me to like do like, and not my face, not my audio, it's just like my recipes. And they had some other dude doing all the other shit,
People need content, man.
People love content. Food content.
Love it.
Now that you've been doing Mythical Kitchen for over 5 years, right? At this point, like, what do you think is like a potential for like what's next? Like how much, like, are you going to just keep going bigger and bigger? Cause you started with like your own channel with your own series that got nixed. Then you sort of like went on to working in-house, and now you've had like so many different iterations of your food brain, right? The podcast, the various shows, you have a team with you now. Like, what do you think what's the next step for not only you and Mythical Kitchen, but like food internet? Like, what do you see?
It's so funny, man, looking back to when I first started at Mythical, making like a bull testicle burrito. And so many people will DM me or just be like, hey, you're the guy that cooks animal dicks, because that was like a big part of Mythical was gross food. And that was a big part of YouTube. And we really don't even do that anymore. We stopped doing the show Food Fears because we stopped seeing numbers on it. And also I didn't love it in certain ways. But I've gone from that to then sitting across from Tom Hanks, asking him about the time his father witnessed his grandfather's murder as we ate like a sous vide calamari salad from Greece where he has citizenship. So like that's the evolution for me over like 3 years, is going from bull dicks to Tom Hanks talking about the unfortunate murder of his grandfather. You know what I mean? And it's insane to watch that trajectory. I've never been one of those guys who likes to set goals. Like even I did sports my whole life. I was in track and field, which is the easiest sport to set a goal in. You go, like, I throw a shot put 50 feet. Next year, I want to throw it 55 feet. I've never thought about it like that. I'm just like, I'm going to work as hard as I can and then stay liquid, figure out how to change with the times and bust my ass, just create good content, good IP. And then whatever comes, because you and I, we can talk about predicting the future of what it's going to be. We have no idea, right?
Yeah.
And so the thing that I take comfort in, Mythical is like never taken any outside investment. We're not the type of company that is going to take VC money and then just triple our content. And well, there was that one time with YouTube, but other than that, but they learned from that. But we never want to overextend ourselves. And so for right now, it's just like building up our library as big as possible, making sure we don't water down the content. And then there's going to be another avenue in 2 years that we then take all the content, take all the stuff that we already do that has naturally gotten bigger and better over time, and then put it on there. And like a great recent example is our Roku channel, where they've done 2,500 episodes of Good Mythical Morning, or about that. And, so many of their podcasts, Ear Biscuits, Hot Dog as a Sandwich, Mythical Kitchen, all this stuff. And so we have a 24/7 Roku channel that is just all Mythical all the time. And it's that, I believe the ad model is similar to YouTube. It's just CPM based. If you watch it, you get an ad served, you get money. And the numbers right now are, not that many people are watching Roku, but at TikTok 2018, not that many people are watching TikTok.
Musically.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
God, I forgot it was Musically.
Yeah.
Huh? Oof. But anyway, so nobody knows what that's going to turn into. But the point is, we have made enough content to run 24/7 for like 8 months to just go on loop. And that's existing somewhere. And so if you just keep putting out the content and keep, don't poo-poo the new lanes that come along. I know so many food people who, when TikTok came out, they're like, this is stupid. This is just Facebook video from 2015 with the tasty stuff. It's never going to take off. And then now they're all like begrudgingly hopping on when it's too late and the platform's already saturated.
Yeah.
And so like, I just want to keep making television quality shows. Like Last Meals, I think, is something that could just run on TV, and it does run on Roku, you know what I mean? But keep making TV quality shows that people are going to love, and then naturally the ecosystem will figure it out. And we have such an incredible team in place that we're going to, be a player in the future of whatever it might look like.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Do you feel like, first of all, I agree with everything you're saying. It's the adapt or die and evolve or dissolve type of thing. But that doesn't exist unless you actually love it.
Oh, true. Yeah.
Right.
100%.
Like there's only so long you can fake it. I've worked with people that kind of faked it, and it just shows. It shows in the content. It shows in the longevity. It shows in the creativity.
Yeah.
And for people like us, and for people like you and the whole Mythical team, there's like that natural like allure to the squad. Rhett and Link have that. They've always had that. The fact that they've been best friends since day one and still going, and have back to the beginning of what we were saying, never sued each other, never split up, never anything. When I first met Rhett and Link, like I told you this, I called them the camp counselors of YouTube because all they want to do is help.
Yeah.
You know, I remember I met them at the YouTube Rewind, the first YouTube Rewind back in the day, and someone was like having trouble with their costume, and they're like, "We got this. We're gonna help you. We're fine." Anyways, so I think the point of that is you can't fake it. You know, you can fake it till you make it, but when you're faking it and you've made it, you're fucked.
Yeah, that resentment is going to build over time, and it's eventually going to show whether you want it to or not. It is going to seep through your pores into the content.
And I think what you said about the track and field thing, like 50 this year, 55 next year, that's fine, but you can kind of plan, but at the same time, you never know years down the road it's gonna happen. When you started making bull test, think that like 5 years later, across from Tom Hanks eating Culinary.
Correct.
Just like in 2 years, what opportunity is going to have? Guys.
Meghan Markle, come on the show. I don't know why that was the. But I thought of the biggest. Meghan. I started watching Suits on Meghan Markle.
Great show. And I think that about where we're at and where we've come in terms of food entertainment in general, right? Like, it's not new. Food entertainment is not new. Just the avenues change, the platforms change, the talent certainly changes, but the cream always rises to the top.
Yeah.
Right?
Big time. And it's funny seeing all these different content avenues. Like, I'm very grateful that I work with a big team. So we have content managers, we have social media managers, all that stuff. And so I put out, like, Post Malone is the best example, who Post Malone is very big with a lot of younger people. And YouTube is now tending to skew older than the other platforms just because TikTok is younger and all that stuff. But, you know, we make the Post Malone episode and then we cut out 5 different TikToks from it that are also going on YouTube Shorts, that are also going on Instagram. We edit it down for Facebook in that aspect ratio. We edit it down for Snapchat in that aspect ratio. We're posting to the community tab on YouTube. You know, we're dropping mentions and promos in the podcast. They're dropping promos on it. Just this huge circle that no matter what platform changes, as long as you have actually made something good. And I know that's like a very sort of privileged position to say. And I know a lot of YouTubers who have made it to the top and go, oh, well, if you're good, you're going to make it to the top. And that's not exactly true. But if you're good and have a giant content machine behind you, hopefully that does work.
I have this, you're 100% right. I have this saying, it's like, make dope content.
Yeah.
Why isn't my shit good? Because it wasn't good. Sorry.
Somebody, this is, they're never gonna listen to it. I'm not gonna name them, but a friend who just got into stand-up comedy, texted me and goes, "Hey man, like, could you tell me how I could get more views on my stand-up comedy clips on Instagram?" And yeah, I've watched them, and then we have a bunch of writers who are like very established stand-ups on GMM, and I showed one of them the clips. I was like, "Hey, do you have any tips for this guy on how to get more views?" And she just goes, "Yeah, be funnier," and then walks away. And I'm like, kind of, though. I don't know what to tell you.
In a way, there's always going to be outliers.
Sure.
You know, I'm not going to name names either, but there's a bunch of boring ass people making food content that are huge, you know?
100%.
It happens, but ultimately make dope shit.
Yeah. And there's a reason a lot of your shit specifically, like, you do an incredible job of, you take a trend and then you flip it and you make it better. And like, I'm thinking, I just watched your pancake spaghetti. Right, the Oreo pancake spaghetti, right? There was like our pancake cereal and all this stuff. And so like, I feel like when I watch one of your videos, I can see how the wheels turned in your mind, where it's like, oh, there's an appetite for pancakes in different shapes.
Yeah.
What different shapes could exist? How can I make the pancakes then taste better? What is another adjective that I can throw in there? It's like all the pieces are out there. You just have to grab them and sort of bring them into you. Yeah. And then it looks delicious as hell is the thing that you actually need. And I watched that while I was starving this morning. I was pissed off.
Dude, it's that people are always like, how was it? I'm like, we talk about it all. Me and Jeff, my assistant, or part, like at this point, business partner. We talk about it all the time. It's like, how could it be bad? You're combining pancakes, delicious, and Oreos, delicious.
Great.
How could that be bad?
Yeah. Sometimes the simple math is the best math. And the math is mathin', bro.
Exactly. But again, that's why I love talking to you, because our brains, you know, tend to think similarly, although you use way better vocabulary. You have a way better vocabulary. See, I can't even talk. Grammar, vocabulary. You're a version of me that is scholastically inclined.
I'm quite loquacious, indeed.
I think we've hit a lot of really awesome things here. We've talked about, food lore and the history of it. And it's just really remarkable to talk about and signify the fact that you started by lying on a book proposal over a decade ago as a food writer, to see and to hear where you've come and where you're going, bobbing and weaving alongside the tide of food, entertainment, and internet. So yeah, man, kudos to you, and really, like, thanks for being on the podcast, and you want to promote anything, talk about it, hit up your Instagrams and your Twitters and whatever.
Buy our cookbook. Or else. No, we got the Mythical Cookbook coming out in March 2024. Get it, like, hopefully from a local bookseller, but like, we know everybody's gonna buy it on Amazon. That's how books work. I'm sorry. But yeah, Mythical Cookbook coming out March 2024. I'm at Mythical Chef Josh on Instagram. Follow me. Follow Mythical Kitchen on YouTube. We have too many platforms to just tell them all. It'd go on forever.
Google
Joshua.
Mythical Kitchen. Yeah, everything will pop up. That's what you gotta know.
Rate me 5 stars on WikiFeed. I'm at like 4.93 right now, but it can be higher. They're good. You want to see them? Come on, Josh. Take my shoes off.
I love that. Dude, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
No, thanks for having me, man. Excited for the future of food right beside you.
Same. Full Discourse is a podcast hosted by me, Josh Elkin, produced by Diane Kang, Melissa D. Montz, and Diamond M Print Productions. Camera operator Jeff Liu. Post-production sound by Coco Lawrence. Production assistance by Melanie D. Watson, and music by me.